Hello, everybody. Welcome at another recording from the Nextview way of working for remote projects. My name is Pieter Hendricks. I'm the industry lead for professional services and utilities, and I'd like to share some more insights with you about how we test in remote projects. So, this module will take approximately 30 minutes, so buckle up and let's be inspired by us. First of all, Nextview has created a handbook about our way of working for remote projects, and this handbook covers a lot of topics with best practices per project phase. So, for example, about how you do remote kickoffs, how you do remote workshops, testing, training, and even go lives. So, if you want a free copy, just contact us via the contact information in the bottom right or at the end of this presentation, and make sure you make good use out of it. So as mentioned, today is about remote testing with Teams, and we will cover this in a number of topics before, during, and after the testing, and at the end we have some learnings. So what do you do before you actually go into the testing? It's all about managing expectations. Expectations about what tools, what knowledge, what preparation testers actually need to do, how much time it will take, and how to properly use the new tools and other hardware for the testing session. So to start off, I would like to share this front page of you. It's an introduction page of a remote testing test plan, and it includes a lot of information about how we normally do testing at a customer. So, for example, we inform the participants about the project and the date range, when the testing will take place and when we will go live, why we are doing the remote testing, because of what circumstances. We also include some information about why we expect people to do some fundamental Salesforce training up front to make sure that everybody has the knowledge at the same level. Also, that the testing session will be train the trainer as well. You can better inform people up front so that they will be active during the session, making notes instead of leaning back. And in the end, we of course mentioned that the better prepared we all are, the more smooth the test will go. Well, we invest some time in writing this down in a clear way, and by styling these kind of documents to give it a professional look and feel. And that way we show that we invested time, and with that we hope that our test users will also invest time in the preparation towards the testing session. So just see that as an inspiration for your own test plan and introduction page. To give you some better understanding about some possible chapters of your test plan for remote testing, here is some content which we shared at a different project, about tools and training, the timeline and planning of the test, how a typical session would look like, the introduction of Teams, something about a test case, how it will look like, how you can do successful virtual testing, some sort of way of working, and let's say rules of engagement, and how we will handle test findings. All again about managing expectations so that people can come prepared into the testing session. Required tools and training. For many people, Google Hangouts or Google Sheets or other tools might be new. And when you test remote, you will have to introduce some new tools because it's just different than when you're sitting all together in the same room. We have introduced Google Hangouts as a easy, user-friendly tool to create virtual test rooms. And with that, we create one central test room, and for example, one central test room and three, for example, breakout rooms for smaller groups of people. So everybody will join in the central room and go into a breakout. For those kind of virtual rooms, you need a tool, and we have very positive experience with Google Hangouts Meet. So that's one of the tools. Second one is Google Sheets, and Google Sheets, well, we would name it Google's version of Excel. And the main advantage is that it's real-time collaboration. You can actually see people typing output from a test case in the sheet. So it motivates, it engages real-time collaboration with each other. It might be new, and it will require a Gmail account, both of these Google tools. Some cases people say, well, I do not have a Gmail account, or I do not want to use my private account for this purpose. Well, with just 5 minutes, you've created a new one. So please stress out the importance. From a training perspective, we ask people to provide some basic training and bring fundamental Salesforce knowledge, because when people have some basic knowledge, it will speed up and smoothen the whole testing experience. For example, when everybody is trained except for one user, it's not really helping out the overall efficiency, because if one user doesn't know the system, the screens, the process, that overall navigation, it will slow you down and it will create a, let's say, disbalance within your team. So what we always do is provide some fundamental Salesforce training. What also helps is to inform people about how much time it will require to actually do the preparing in terms of training you in the new Salesforce solution. More on that in the next part. So what you can do on the Salesforce Trailhead environment is make a selection of some specific trailheads that inform people, educate people about basic navigation in Salesforce, so that they can get used to the application, to the objects, and to the page layouts. And for example, some specific modules about, in this case, Field Service Lightning. Again, the better trained the people are in the beginning of a test session, the more smooth it will be and the better the quality of the output will be. End-to-end test planning. Well, testing takes time, and that's time well spent. And the good thing with planning ahead is that people can reserve time slots up front. And what we always do is communicate up front how much time they need to reserve, especially when you're working remote. You want people to have these spots booked in their agenda so that they know what moments in the week they have to find a quiet place in which they can do testing without too much background noise, and that they're already aware of that and they can prepare in the right way. As you can see, in this case, we ask people to prepare and reserve quite some time slots, but it's always more easy to free up some time instead of having to add more time slots. So based on the pace of the test sessions and the progress made, you can decrease or free up some slots afterwards. Again, it's all about managing expectations and managing the expectation up front. That it will take quite some time and that it will require an investment, makes it better for everybody so that they can prepare in a good way. During the session, we will go into a number of topics about using Google Hangouts, rhythm and gamification, different roles people have in the team, the importance of providing expert support, and some final topics. So let's move on. Two things on this slide. On the left side, you can see an example agenda for a testing session, which will start with a kickoff and welcome, in which you say and inform users about what are we going to test, which part of the solution, which business processes, etc. Then you will execute the actual test cases, and that will be the main part of the testing session, these executing test case blocks. As you can see, after each test case execution block, there's a review and Q&A, and that's where it becomes interesting and where the remote part comes in. As you can see on the right, we will always kick off a test session in a central classroom. That's where the welcome and kickoff is. When everybody got some explanation about what we will be doing and what test cases to be executed, they will break out in individual small virtual test rooms. And that is where you do the actual execution of test cases. In these small breakouts and small test rooms, you will have approximately 3 to 5 people, which will be testing, and one Salesforce expert. And this expert will guide the teams. And within these small groups and the small test rooms, you can drive interaction and people have discussions. And nobody has to be on mute, but it can really be an interactive way of working together. After spending some time in the individual breakouts, people get back together in the classroom, the review and Q&A central classroom. Questions can be answered. Some specific test cases can be highlighted. And topics can be addressed which are concerned to all members of the whole test group. In the end, when people have done the final breakouts again, you can do the review and wrap up in the central classroom again. Test teams, introducing names and faces. What we have learned is that it really helps to add a name and a face to a team. In this case, we use the Trailhead characters from Salesforce. So we created Team Astro, Team Cody, and Team Einstein. And each team could be focused on a specific business unit or a specific type of product. With this, people feel, let's say, as a real team, and they can focus on a certain part of the business. Having a name and a face also drives, let's say, a healthy competition and gamification, because then it's not just team 1 or team 2, but people already start making comments like, oh, Team Einstein will win. They have the best testers because we are the smartest. Well, sounds a little bit funny, and a test might be funny as well. That's actually quite important. But driving this sort of healthy competition is good for the working atmosphere, especially when you are working together over a certain time frame with a high frequency. So introducing names and faces, putting faces and names onto the teams has really proven to be a positive experience. Also, with this, you can include a specific test room for a team, which can be used for the breakout. So this for the introduction of the test teams. What you can see over here is a concept test case with just fiction data, which is made up for this example. You see a test sheet with a case, which describes on what part of the process we will be testing, the overall scenario, and also the testing steps. We also include the test user and provide some instruction on specific data for that specific team. After the team executed the test case, they can just put the result on pass, fail, or maybe some other specific status which you would like to introduce. Maybe not applicable or not available if it doesn't apply to that specific team. As you can see, we have introduced color coding to really drive engagement and again, the healthy competition or overview at a glance on the progress of the individual teams. As well, what you can see is that we included, again, the team names, including the logos, in the same sheet. And it didn't just fit on the slide, but as you can probably understand, is on the right part of the screen, Team Einstein would be displayed. So in this case, all 3 teams and their progress can be monitored at a glance at the same time. It's also positive for the teams that they can see what feedback a different team has provided on a certain test case. So even when working in these individual breakouts per team, there is some cross interaction between the teams because they can learn and see from their individual experiences per team. How to make testing fun, active, and efficient. First, it's all about acting as teams, and you want clear roles for a team member. You do not want one person constantly working in Salesforce and clicking through the system. You want everybody to touch the system, to learn the process, and also to understand what your colleague will be doing in the future. So everybody tests all test cases. That was the idea of this test approach. Not only the things that you will do in the future yourself, but also try to look it through the eyes from your colleague that is in the future responsible for maybe a different business process. Learning how they will work is really beneficial to everybody because you better understand their working system and their working processes. For that, we also want people to have clear roles. For example, one team member will explain the test case. So he will go into the Google Sheet and say, we will now create a case for that customer on that product. The second person will share his screen and will execute the test case in Salesforce. The third one can actually register results in the Google Sheets. While doing that and while rotating, you make sure that all people actually touch the system and are proactive during the session. Really important. You do not want people to be leaning back and just looking how other people are doing the work and testing the system. Really make it a team effort. Be active. In these small group test sessions and these breakouts, you really want everybody to have the camera on. Nobody on mute, coaching each other. Really important. You do not want somebody who has the camera out, with the camera turned off, and being on mute that he or she is shampooing his cat on the background. Well, sounds funny, but yeah, these kind of things actually happen when working remote. So please promote that team members are active, are showing their faces, and are not on mute. Minimizing background noise is something we all prefer, but please also be tolerant if not possible, since it's possible that when people are working remote, they are not the only person at home. Finally, to make it efficient, we also add a Salesforce expert to each testing team in the breakout to stimulate active collaboration, provide some guidance on the solution, maybe do some timekeeping and troubleshooting, and make sure that everything goes smooth. Last but not least, since we're spending quite some time in these testing sessions, make sure that everybody has fun while doing it. So yes, it's a formal and important activity, but it can be funny as well. So make sure everybody has a good time while testing the system and the new solution. After, something about evaluation, bugs versus new requirements, prioritizing them, and also about the backlog. First of all, it's very important to capture all feedback during end-to-end testing. It's not about if it's a bug or a finding or a new requirement in the beginning. Just be open to feedback. So just capture all this feedback in the test sheet. At the end of each testing day, the project team, together with the product owner, can actually evaluate the results and see what did the users put on passed and failed. And was it actually failed, or did they just expect a different outcome? And was it maybe a new requirement? Next to that, also make sure that you do a check on the feedback. Was there certain feedback on functionality? And maybe some good ideas about how we can even make it a better solution, or maybe about how we can improve usability. Capture all that feedback. That's very important. And log it, register it into a tool like, for example, Jira, an Agile Scrum tool, which is very easy to add all kind of new things, add them to the backlog, and then have the product owner shift and prioritize. Of course, it's always important to distinguish between bugs and new requirements. Everybody who has participated in a number of projects will recognize this topic. It's very important to upfront, again, manage expectations about what is a bug and what is a new requirement. Both are very welcome to each project team, but it is important in the testing phase to make a clear distinction, because bugs need to be solved before go live, because they might be interfering the actual working of the system. New requirements can be prioritized as well, because sometimes they might have a very positive business case. So be open to these feedback items for both bugs and new requirements, log them in your system, and discuss them with your product owner. Of course, a large part of the focus during the end-to-end test will be to solve bugs. So, after a number of remote testing sessions, we have some learnings about what went well and what we think we should still improve on. So, what went well? Preparation paid off. Upfront, please plan an AV check meeting in which you invite all users to test their audio and video connection, turn on their webcam, use their Bluetooth headphones, log into a Google Meet, share their screen, mute and unmute themselves. This investment of approximately 1 hour will pay off for sure. It will save you a lot of time. If you do not do this, your first testing session will probably be only spent on getting people online, helping them get onboarded, sharing their screen, having mute and unmute support, etc., etc. That's really a waste of time and is a real bad start of your testing session. So, first tip, plan an AV check meeting upfront. Secondly, people get used to switching between these rooms very fast, from the central room to a breakout or another breakout per team, and then again back to the central room. Works really smooth. Keeps teams focused, and what we also learned is that the energy level keeps very high when you have these small rooms in which people are allowed to speak, are allowed to discuss, and are allowed to have, let's say, some shared views on a certain part of the solution or functionality. So driving discussion and interaction is really important in these breakouts. What we also have seen is that people actually adapt quite fast to new tools and circumstances. Tools like Google Sheets and Google Hangouts, and circumstances like doing test sessions at home when people walk by in the background or whatever. That's all good. We are all aware of these new circumstances of working remote, so please be tolerant. And people actually get used to that quite fast. We have also seen that testing remote has not been experienced as disturbing. Kids' partners at houses were actually providing tech support to get that Bluetooth headset connected, or to mute and unmute somebody. So that was really positive. It's also important when introducing new tools, do not introduce too many tools. We all know Kahoot with funny questions, sounds, quizzes, etc. We all know them and they can be fun, but please keep it simple. Using new tools, sharing screens, using Bluetooth audio headsets, jumping from one meeting room to the other, that's more than enough already. So if it's not needed or if it doesn't serve a certain goal, do not go into the Kahoot quiz tool or whatever quizzing tool. It can only make it more complex for people to understand. Google Classrooms is in some cases used for professional Q&A. If you don't need it, don't use it. You can always ask questions just in the chat of Google Hangout. Otherwise, it's just another tool that's introduced and where people need to get used to. Small group guidance works really well. Add an expert to the team who can do troubleshooting, timekeeping, works really well. In the end, real-time progress tracking, and I will show you in a minute, in one document drives healthy competition. People have a clear view on the speed, they can learn from each other, and that worked really well. So what you see over here is to make it easy for people to learn how to jump from one room to the other. It's all about knowing where to go. So what we did in the invites and in the overall, let's say, testing document, we included all test rooms. So for example, on the first Google Sheet where all test cases were included, we added a sort of basic info sheet, which included the link to the central test room and to the individual breakout test rooms for Team Astro, and in the bottom of the screen would be Team Cody, and further below even Team Einstein. Making it easy and accessible really drives the efficiency. Next to that, when we planned the invites for all testers in their calendars, we included again the same links to the central test room and the individual test rooms. You do not want people to have to search in their emails to find out where was it again, where do I need to go now. Really make it as simple as possible. Next to that, it's always good when you introduce Google Hangouts or Google Meet that you learn people on how to share their screen, how to mute or unmute themselves. That are just the basics. Explaining that in an AV check session is really important. But as you can imagine, people might have invested in a premium Bluetooth headset. Doesn't only look good, but also the sound is much better. But in some cases, this might block the microphone because the default setting is that the microphone from Google Hangout is looking for your internal microphone. It has happened many times that people are struggling in finding how to switch to their Bluetooth headset. For that, just go to the settings in the bottom right of Google Hangouts and select via this drop-down the right audio connection. In this case, the internal or Bluetooth microphone. So, when everybody starts working home, people get creative in creating and developing all kinds of plugins. And one of the plugins that we really found very useful is the Google Meet Grid View plugin. With this, you can not only just see 4 people on the right of your screen, but actually see everybody at the same time. It's a free plugin. It's just 2 minutes of installation. Just click on the link. You can see all your colleagues at the same time. It really drives the interaction, and you really have the feeling that you're actually in the same room with each other. So please make use of that. Finally, gamification. Gamification is fun, and it makes it more, let's say, a good way of working together. So what we did, again, we introduced the teams in a sort of a, let's say, easy leaderboard, which was included in a test sheet, testing Google Sheet document. With that, by just throwing in some formulas and conditional formatting, you can see what the progress is per team. So for this example, Team Astro, how many test cases have they passed, how many have failed, and how many do they still have to execute? As you can see, by adding just some conditional formatting, it gives some color coding. You can see who is leading the pack. Of course, testing is not a competition, but seeing how far you are in comparison to the other teams does give some, let's say, good overview. And what we have learned is that when people are seem to be having some challenges and staying up with the pace of the other teams, that they ask for some extra support. You can proactively provide support or plan an additional testing session. And again, healthy competition is always a good thing to do. And it always also says something about the knowledge level of your people that are actually testing. So gamification, by just throwing in some formulas and some conditional formatting, really works well. What did we learn? Good internet connection is really key. Well, sounds like an open door, like we would say, but in this case, when hopping in from one meeting room into the other, from the central test classroom into individual ones, with web cameras on, sharing screens, multiple audio connections, good internet is really key. So please make sure you have a good connection. Also, when working from home, Might be that the Wi-Fi connection is not that good upstairs, maybe. Then also it can help to have a hotspot available from your phone. Multiple meeting rooms, as mentioned, requires quite some internet capacity and might cause some lag. So if possible, just be in one room at the same time. If you leave the central classroom and jump into your breakout, just exit that room and close that internet tab. Just with one click, you go back to that one. So minimize the amount of open meeting rooms. It will prevent lag, and it will also help in making sure there's no echo or unmuting in the same rooms, in multiple rooms at the same time. Because you can imagine, if you are in 3 rooms at the same time, and in each individual room you have your microphone open, people will get a lot of echoing, and that's of course not a good way to collaborate with each other. One thing we learned is that supporting people on how to navigate the system is a little bit more difficult when you're not actually sitting next to someone. Normally you could say, point your finger or point your mouse on the top right button, on the top right part of the screen, and push the create case button. It's just over there. But when you're not able to, let's say, point your finger on the screen and actually sit next to somebody, that can be a little bit tricky. So supporting users in navigating the application is a little bit more difficult, especially when you have a slow internet connection where there might be some lag in the screen sharing. So please be aware of that. What we also learned is that small team breakouts have quite a high energy level, as mentioned before. So they don't have to be just 30 to 45 minutes. We have examples in which users would like to have 60 to 90 minutes testing sessions. They were really having a positive vibe in the team, finishing one test case after the other, really with a good energy level. Please provide room for that. You do not need to create all kind of review and Q&A sessions taking 15 minutes in between when users just want to continue testing. So adjust to your team and the energy level. That would be my main takeaway for that. Well, that's already the last slide. I hope you enjoyed it and you can take some learnings from it. As mentioned in the introduction, my name is Peter Hendricks. I would love to share some more best practices with you in working remote. This session was about testing with remote teams. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me directly via email, and then I'm happy to support you. So good luck and enjoy the rest of your day.